Hey there everyone. So for my journal entry today, I'm going to be doing a follow-up of my previous journal, which I did my previous journal on my ideas around tests and testing and some of the reforms that can be made to the testing system. I specifically kind of my ideas were focused on getting rid of standardized testing as a whole and modifying testing to better fit individual students' in classroom needs. So in that video, I kind of brought up some personal experiences with testing, and I mentioned how I had severe test anxiety all throughout my childhood, and even now I still have severe test anxiety. Specifically, in middle school, I remember I had to get special accommodations for math tests, and I had to also so I had testing extensions where I had to, I got extra time, and I also had to go to the office to take tests. And then in high school, I remember that I was really nervous about taking the SAT and the ACT, and I didn't do super well on either one of those tests. And then when I got to college, I still have severe test anxiety, especially when it comes to taking lecture-based exams, just because it always gives me anxiety when somebody gets up in the classroom and it just gets loud and distracting and you see people finishing. And even now I'm nervous about taking my praxis exam. So I kind of brought up this whole idea that standardized testing can give students anxiety. And so Dr. Curry Knight, our professor, he mentioned, or he posed a question to me asking me, basically, would I still get testing anxiety if I was assessed in a different way other than standardized testing? And to answer his question, yes, I would still have some anxiety, but in another way, I think I would be a lot better off being tested in a way that better fit my needs. I feel like the way I'm tested gives me more anxiety than the way I'm tested, it gives me more anxiety than being assessed, than the material that I'm being assessed on. So I'm kind of relating this to a few different things today. So my first thing I'm kind of relating my journal entry on is high tech high and performance-based assessment. So like I said in my last journal entry that I wanted to do away with standardized testing and that I think there needs to be reform to the testing system, and my idea is making testing a more performance-based assessment, and which, as we've seen from watching the video in class or the documentary in class about high tech high, there are many ways that this testing system can be reformed to better fit many different students' needs. So for me personally, in high school, so I obviously went to a traditional public high school, and I took your standard classes, math, English, science, history, all that. But in high school, I was very involved in performing arts. So my high school had a dance classes, and as a person, personally, I feel like in those classes were the classes that I learned the most. Even though they were just elective classes, they really allowed me to get involved with the creative process in creating and performing and writing and all these different areas I was really being exposed to in that class. And so in terms of performance, I'll just go a little bit more in depth about what my electives in dance were. So in my high school, we had dance classes, and so basically you would start off and you would take a foundations dance class your freshman year, and then it was intermediate, and then after intermediate it was called honors proficient. And I took foundations and intermediate my freshman year, both of those, first and second semester, and then I took dance every semester afterwards in high school, and I took the honors proficient multiple times. So in my honors dance class, we were required to create our own dance pieces that were on display for and they'd be put in the show, and we'd have to create these pieces. And so for me, this is one of the, even though it's not traditional, like traditionally known as education, or it's not a traditional like type of class, I feel like in those classes where I learned the most that I've ever learned in my entire life from a course or from a class. Behind performing, I learned so many things. I learned obviously basic things, like I learned how to create, and creating is a very innovative process. I learned how to make movement go with music. I mean, creating to music is challenging in certain areas, and I learned about different like genres of expressing like theme, and I had to learn how to, like, I had to pick a theme and motif for the pieces that I created, and whatnot. So I remember, so my junior year of high school, for my honors piece, I had 2 other girls in it. I did create some solos, but I had 2 other girls in my honors piece, and we did a piece about, like, we wore masks in the piece, and we did a piece based off, of, like, not showing your true self to the real world, and how people have their own problems, but yet the world, like, the rest of the world doesn't really know what's going on in your own life. And so in there we, like, featured, like, somebody that had, like, an eating disorder, and we did somebody that had lost, like, a close loved one, and we used, like, objects to represent, like, whatnot. And so we had to do a lot of research to kind of figure out about, like, different things. Like, we did research on, like, anorexia and whatnot to, like, better create the piece. So first we had to do research to create this piece, kind of like how in the High Tech High video, when the girl that was creating the play, they had to do research on the play that they were presenting. So kind of like that, we had to do that. And then so then we had to do research, and then we obviously had to do written assignments in that class, like journal entries explaining, like, how our creative process was going. And so that was, like, kind of the writing intensive, and we had to explain, like, our theme and our motif and all of that stuff. So in that way we incorporated that. And then the creating process was very innovative as well. And so in those aspects, while this class wasn't really considered like a traditional education course, it was an elective, I learned so much in my 4 years of high school, and about dance, and just about learning and creating. And I learned a lot of history through it. It was some of the best years of my life, because in those moments I actually enjoyed learning, and getting to go on stage and perform my pieces that I had created myself was some of, like, my best and most rewarding moments in my life. And so that's kind of where I bring this talk. I gave kind of a personal experience and how I'm kind of relating it to what we've talked about in class. High Tech High, the school we watched the video on in class, they basically, the students aren't, like, formally assessed. They are formally assessed, but they're assessed in more of a project type of way, rather than, they're assessed in a project type of way rather than taking, like, a standardized test. And so it kind of made me think about, like, my own experience, like I mentioned earlier, and, you know, I think this performance-based assessment, for a lot of students, it's a really good way of assessing, because a lot of students don't do well on standardized testing, and performance-based assessment allows students to be creative, innovative, allows them to really focus on topics of interest to them, and I'm a firm believer that that is still learning. There is so much learning going on. Like in the High Tech High video, the girl that did the play, okay, when I first saw the High Tech High video, I was thinking, wow, how are they really learning? But then when I really, like, thought about it deep down, the girl that created the play, first off, there's a lot that goes into creating a performance. They obviously had to research a lot to accurately portray the scenes. Obviously, directing and performing is a whole nother set of skills that are very important. And so, in my opinion, that was one of the best learning experiences, and I can relate to that into a sense. What am I saying? I can relate to that in a sense because of what I mentioned previously, that I danced all throughout high school, and that creative process really taught me a whole lot about a lot of different aspects of a lot of different things. And so I kind of believe that this whole standardized testing needs to be done away with, or not, maybe not even completely done away with, but I think that there needs to be options for students who feel like they could do better with performance-based assessment. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have test anxiety, and I still do get nervous before performing or putting on a presentation or whatnot, but I think it's a good kind of nervousness. It's a nervousness that allows me to do a good production or a good presentation, but I don't get so stressed out that I don't get stressed out because I'm nervous about presenting. Let me think through this. I don't get nervous because I'm nervous about not knowing the material. It's more so just I'm a little nervous about presenting. But it's nowhere near to the extent as if when I take standardized tests or just tests in general. So this is kind of my kind of an overview of what I talked about. Is I just think kind of standardized testing needs to be done away with, and I was kind of answering Dr. Curry Knight's question for me in the last journal entry, where I said that I kind of had this idea that that test anxiety was a big reason for why I wanted to do away with standardized testing. And to answer this question, I do think that I would still have some degree of anxiety doing performance-based assessment, but like I've given a personal example, I think performance-based assessment is a great and accurate way of showing what students know, and it allows them to be more creative and innovative. They're not just memorizing material for a test. They're really truly showing that they're just able to display the knowledge that they've learned. So that was my journal entry. I hope you guys all have a great night and a great spring break.